What a glimpse. We rocking hard tonight, folks. Welcome to the Virgin College Vibes podcast. This is your host, Jeremy Vermendi. And just to speed things up a little bit, here are the top stories of the night. Stay tuned for more.
We have breaking news to report in the case of the killing of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery. A grand jury has indicted all three suspects on murder charges.
NASA's headquarters in Washington, D.C. will now bear the name of Mary W. Jackson, the first African-American female engineer at NASA.
Welcome back, everybody. You know, my first guest tonight is one of Young America's legendary heroes. She just published her new book, The Unboxing, A Black Girl's Journey of Mental Health, Faith, and Identity, and is the current CEO of a racial empowerment organization and motivational student and the current student at Princeton University. Please welcome Nicole Williams. Ms. Nicole, thank you for joining us, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you for that very bold introduction as well.
No, I do want to start off with some of the recent happenings that has been transpiring in today's American society right now. We are currently surrounded by a country of chaos and towards a huge national debate. Until when racism will end, people are already tired. They're already frustrated. They're already anxious about looking for a change, not only from the federal government, which is mainly expected from all Americans, but also from their local communities as well. And you recently started a lot of fundraisers and campaigns to advocate for racial justice and empowerment. How did your fundraisers and campaigns to advocate for racial justice and empowerment play a huge role in the student and to your community?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my nonprofit, Luna Empowered, which we just founded this summer, seeks to empower students to lead emotionally and spiritually healthy lives as they pursue their academic goals. And so I'm just a firm believer that when we are emotionally and spiritually healthy, then that empowers us to be better advocates in our community for justice, for social change. And so with the release of our mental health and faith journals, we really wanted to donate half of that money to the Equal Justice Initiative, which is already a really awesome organization, already doing a lot of great work surrounding racial justice, specifically mass incarceration. And so I just really wanted to tie the work that we were doing with work that's already being done. I think something that's so powerful for us as young people is to be able to identify the great works that other people are already doing and really support those works and combine our works with their works, because I believe that makes more powerful work as we're able to come together as a community.
And one of the greatest things that you mentioned is how a person's mental health plays a huge role in assuring that the person itself is being secure from not only what's happening in America right now, but what would also what political or social events will come across their way in the future. And I first have a bone to pick with you because your journals about the power of mental health were really inspiring, and they led to a lot of hope for people to get back in shape and allow their mental health to fluctuate. But I do want to ask you, do you think the role of an African-American person's mental health has changed since American history? And if so, why?
I would say there's this book that I have, it's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and it talks about kind of the generational trauma that we as the Black community have as a result of slavery, some behaviors, ways of thinking, parenting that have kind of been birthed out of that trauma, that pain. So I definitely would say that as a community, we suffer a lot, not because we are inherently less than or, can't think at the same level, but because of that systematic oppression and the microaggressions that we experience in different spaces within the U.S. So I definitely would say that for us as people of color, we really have to even fight more proactively to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. There's a great quote by Audre Lorde. She says, I'm not quoting it exactly, but to the essence of that, self-care is in a sense a political warfare, because by the state we are being attacked, and it's so aggressive that we have to fight to protect our health. So I definitely would say that with everything going on, I mean, as a community, we're always aware of this injustice, and it's really great that it's getting to the level that it is in terms of of like national attention. But as a community, we are always grieving the loss of our brothers to the prison system and so many women. And so, yeah, just maintaining that consistent attention to our own self-care as we are pouring our lives out to fight for the justice of our brothers and sisters.
And going back to your perspective on how today's minority America has united in a case of traditional trauma that people of color had to face, help me understand, like, what was your thoughts and perspective this whole time on not only the lost victims who were subject to police violence, but also to how today's American society has stood up and has led to a call to action at a global spectrum. So what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's been really encouraging to see people come together. I've been afforded the privilege to attend several protests and just seeing so many come together. I love, there's so many of my like white allies that have the signs up, white silence is violence. And so I love that even in this movement, we're having real allyship with our white brothers and sisters, and they're acknowledging the privilege that they have to be able to speak out. My sister, she's a sophomore in high school, and just seeing how them as high school students are getting together and being very proactive about calling out racist behavior by their peers. And so, yeah, it's been very encouraging. And I was, listening as I'm working on my French, listening to this French podcast and just hearing about all of the protests going on in France as well. And even to hear about, Black brothers and sisters in France that are being attacked by the police and they're being able to get justice because of all the protests going on. So it's been really encouraging to just see this global movement. Where we're coming together and we're saying that we will no longer tolerate the oppression of Black bodies.
So recently, a national debate has taken up the stage as far as removing Confederate monuments. But also something unexpected that we also saw was that they were also protesting and proposing to remove one of America's legends that somehow shared a past of engagement with slavery. And like, do you think removing the Confederate monuments from your standpoint will lead the way for Americans to seek, peace and prosperity in the future?
That's a great question. I know at Princeton, there is a huge uproar with the creation of a statue for Woodrow Wilson, a memorial statue, because he was one of the founders of our university, but he also had a very deep legacy of racism in our country. And in my own experience, I guess, as I've wrestled with it and been frustrated by those who want to see these individuals with very racist legacies uplifted, I think a lack of desire to really want to acknowledge the pain that it brings the people of color to see these statues up. I think the lack of empathy to really understand that pain that we feel, I think is very scary, that insensitivity. I think that we shouldn't necessarily be elevating these figures that are so connected to this racist legacy, to building a system of racial oppression. And I think the fact that we are so resistant as a nation to let that to not memorialize them is just a reflection of the fact that we have so much more to grow when it comes to really understanding each other's stories and appreciating each other's stories, and being able to honor the pain of our Black brothers and sisters.
Here's what sounded very surprising to me as far as Princeton's history with generational trauma for people of color. This recent press release has gotten really viral. A recent valedictorian, who is an African-American himself, had graduated and has been historically named the first African-American to be valedictorian. What do you make about that?
I think it's definitely a beautiful thing that are part of Princeton's history. I was he was one of the RCAs within the college that I lived in at Princeton. So it was really cool to see that, because I always just would see him in the library studying. So it was awesome. And I think, it kind of makes you think though, wow, is he really the first? Like, are we really that slow in coming to racial unity that he's the first in 2020? So yeah, it's kind of a bittersweet celebration where we are so joyous of the reality of having him to be the first Black valedictorian, but then really we're again wrestling with why it's taken us so long as a nation for our organizations to really accept Black people and allow them to thrive in a way I'm sure there were so many Black people who attended Princeton previously that had the capacity to be valedictorian.
And recently, the COVID-19 pandemic, we're still on the first wave, according to the top health officials. As far as, the aspect of education, there's been some dispute between whether or not we are still willing to increase more funding for public education. And there's also this debate as to whether or not we should privatize schools by our current sitting Secretary of Education. You also talked about in one of your mental health journals that it is very essential, and I'm just summarizing it, but it is very essential to balance your mental health with leading the way to your academic success and making sure that you are very comfortable with what you're doing. And you mentioned, the role of mental health allow us to take it up a notch and make sure that we get our voices heard. Like there's some people that can understand based on your mental health. How crucial is a person's mental health when deciding what to do with their career pathway?
Yeah, I think it's really deeply connected. My personal story is I suffered from a lot of depression, anxiety my freshman year of high school, of college especially, and then all throughout high school and middle school. But I didn't have the language to articulate it, and I didn't know that's what it was called. And I really just normalized a lot of the sadness, a lot of the emptiness. And it wasn't until really starting therapy my freshman year when I was really starting to be able to articulate what I was experiencing and define it so that I could get help and so that I could be healed. And I would just say in my own personal journey, as I have, been freed from depression and anxiety and really learned how to manage stress better and better self-image, I feel more empowered than to look at the bigger picture of what I could do and what I can become. I think when I was depressed, it was just I was just meeting the bottom line. Like I was just going to classes and I was just trying to get the work done. It's just, like you're just trying to get through it. You're just kind of doing the basic, things that you need to do. But really being free from that, like I have so much joy in my coursework now. Like I love going to class. Like obviously it's not always fun, but there's just a certain level of hope that I have in the work that I do and fulfillment. And it's really just inspired me to want to dig deeper, to want to do more reading, to want to do more research, and to just think more critically and more deeply. So I would say, the healthier that we are as individuals, like the deeper and more fully we're able to engage with whatever work we do, whether it's academic work or anything else. I would say they're very deeply interconnected.
So nowadays, remote learning has become very popular amongst every aspect of the American life. And as students are slowly transitioning to the virtual environment, there could result some vulnerabilities along the way, as far as leading them to somewhat distractions or leading them to some type of uncertainty, not just from our current dealings with the COVID-19 pandemic, but also how students are closely appealing themselves to be engaged. From your experience, how can young Americans these days, and especially for the class of 2020 who successfully graduated virtually from Princeton University, I hope, and yes, we're celebrating very hard on that. From your experience, how can young Americans best adapt towards change?
Yeah, it's a great question. Coming home and having to finish the spring semester online was difficult. I had a migraine one day because I was just at the computer for like 5 hours straight. It was really bad. I think, again, just making sure that we're prioritizing our own self-care. I was getting really overwhelmed because I was struggling to manage some of my home responsibilities and my academic work. And I was really trying to force myself to get I was so tempted to just like not sleep. But sleep has become something that's really important to me, a real core value in my life. And so finally, I just kind of emailed my professors and I was like, I'm not going to be able to get it all done. And it was really amazing to just be a recipient of grace in that moment. Like they were totally like, it's okay. Like right now we understand it's difficult. So I think really just having grace for ourselves, and prayerfully all students have professors that are also just as graceful as we're just navigating this together, and making sure we're just taking time out to rest and to do the things that are going to fill us up, and not becoming too obsessed with our work and just getting everything done.
Well, this was Nicole Williams. She is the former CEO of Luna Empowerment. Ms. Nicole, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.